You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Χαίρετε πάντες, εγώ είμαι η εσέ και τούτο εστίν Ζῶν හෙλληνιστί. Hello everyone, my name is Jesse Orloff and this is Living in Greek. Σήμερον ερωτώμεν τι εν τε πήρä μου. Today we're asking, what's in my bag? This segment of Living in Greek I'm calling What's in My Bag, and it's going to be kind of an opportunity for me to share with you all some of the books that I find interesting or I found really helpful as I study Greek. Today, I wanted to talk about a book that I found really, really helpful over the past 3 months. It feels like I've had this book for much longer, but it's really only been 3 months and it's been revolutionary for me. And the book that I'm talking about today is a book called Speaking Ancient Greek as a Living Language by Christoph Rico. It's published by Police Institute Press. And this book is really, really interesting to me because it is a Greek grammar, but it is done entirely immersion-based. So from start to finish, the entire book is assuming that you are going to spend 98 to 100% of your time in the Greek language, either on your own or with students. I think the book is more geared towards a classroom of individuals, but you could run through it on your own like I have. And man, this book it's just really cool, I think, because over the last 3 months, I discovered it. I discovered it online about kind of the beginning of September, and it was really an answer to one of my prayers because I've been looking for a living language immersion-based Greek curriculum, and this book came along at just the right time. And I'd like to talk about some of the features that I think are the most useful or the most interesting in this book. And then I'll go into just some kind of general things or maybe some things that I didn't like about the book before I talk about why specifically I have it in my bag right now. All right, so some of the features that I like best about this book are that it starts with a TPR approach. TPR stands for Total Physical Response. If you are a regular listener to Proof Text, you may have heard Dr. Jennifer Noonan's episode on TPR that was released a couple weeks ago. And I would advise you to go listen to that episode. She'll talk about it in much more detail than I will. But I'll give you a summary of what TPR is. TPR, again, total physical response, is an approach that helps you to try to bridge the comprehensible input gap with individuals who know very, very little of the language. And so you give commands, maybe to a student who does know the language a little bit better, or maybe you act them out yourself. And then you can give those commands to the new students. And by seeing someone act out these commands, they can connect the dots on what they mean, and then they can act them out themselves. And so they get to start interacting with the language without having to know too much of it and without having to speak. And studies have shown, I believe, that using TPR as kind of an entryway into the language is a really helpful way to get started in living language when your students, they don't have a foundation yet in that language. So this book, it starts with TPR. Even before you get into the main chapters of the book, it runs through a a really long list of commands and instructions that you can demonstrate and ask of your students that primes them for what they're about to experience. Another thing I find really fun with this book, so the general structure of most of the chapters is that you'll have kind of a short, silly, or kind of off-the-wall narrative, and then you'll have a series of exercises where you can practice output, where you can practice writing if you're writing, or speaking, that are based on this narrative. These narratives are really fun. They all focus on a fictional set of students, and each one of these students throughout this book is given a unique personality that's really funny and helps them to stick in your memory, which just helps you to learn these stories even better. The stories start out very, very simple, and they progress in complexity as the book goes on and as you and the students become more proficient. Another really interesting thing about this book is at the end of each chapter, it has a lexicon of all or most of the words that you encountered in that chapter. But what makes this lexicon unique is that it's all in Greek. And it's not providing definitions so much as it's providing example sentences that put the word in context. Because why I think that's interesting is because the meaning of words really comes from the context, the sentences, the way that they're used. And by building the lexicon like this, it's trying to get directly at that context and to show the user of the book or the students in the class exactly how these words are supposed to be used. One of my favorite things about this book is that there are just so many exercises and examples to practice your output that if you do them as you go through them, you get a lot of really excellent time speaking. And it's that practice that helps to take this theoretical knowledge of Greek and make it more natural and automatic for you. There are some there's a couple negatives in here and that I want to talk about, and maybe not all of them are really negatives, but just some things to be aware of with this book. The first thing that I found kind of interesting that I didn't really love about the book was that if you're studying on your own, then you are dependent on some of the audio files that they provide on their website, and they use kind of interesting pronunciation scheme. I'm not exactly sure how they came to it. It sounds, I think it's something of a historical pronunciation that's been maybe blended with Erasmian, or maybe it's a really early form of a reconstructed Koine dialect that is trying to bridge the gap between maybe a classical or an Attic pronunciation. I'm not exactly sure why they came to the decision to use that pronunciation. Maybe that was just the pronunciation that Christoph Rico was familiar with, and that's what they went with. But as a reconstructed Koine pronunciation speaker myself, it really doesn't provide a problem for you. I just didn't use any of the audio, and I would read the examples myself, and I would use my own speaking. And in a classroom setting, as I would be the one, or the teacher would be the one kind of setting the pronunciation. So that's not a really big issue at all. Another thing to be aware of is that this book is, you can see here, this book is level 1. Indicating that there are or will be more levels after that. And what that means is that you will not get a complete survey of Greek morphology in this book like you would in, say, The Basics of Biblical Greek by Bill Mounts. It doesn't cover everything, but it covers a lot, and it covers some of the most important things to start with. It covers nouns and all of the cases. For verbs, it covers present indicative and aorist imperative, which I think is really interesting. It doesn't start you, it doesn't cover all of the imperative verbs right away. It starts you with, all of the indicative verbs right away. It starts you with the aorist imperative verbs and present indicative, because as part of TPR, you're using a lot of those aorist imperatives. It also teaches a little bit on the infinitive and participles. It covers some prepositions. You get all of your numbers. There's even some really cool sections there that I found really helpful around kind of giving directions, like how do you get from, Jerusalem to Britain or something like that. And those chapters help you to learn prepositions. And there's even some telling time and talking about the day of the week, which some of those things are just really helpful if you're wanting to use a language in a living language setting and to have some conversation. The last thing that I think I want to call out, this is just something to be aware of, and something really helpful actually, is that there is a companion volume. It's a lot smaller, but this is the teacher's volume for level 1. And inside of here, it has English translations for the narratives. It has answer keys to all of the exercises. And there's even a chapter that's kind of a really cool chapter that shows the how there were changes from the Attic dialect to the Koine dialect, and it's just got some really interesting tables and charts in there that I think would be helpful if you're either trying to learn an older dialect of Greek, or if you're coming from a classical Attic dialect and moving into the Koine dialect. So why is it in my bag? Well, as I've mentioned before in some of the other episodes, my goal is to be able to speak Greek fluently. I am really interested in Greek as a living language, and this is really the first full grammar that I've encountered that teaches Greek as a living language. There may be some others out there, so if any of you know of any good ones, please let me know. But this one is, I was able to go through it entirely on my own, and I learned a ton. And I mentioned before that it was an answered prayer, and the reason I say that is because as I've taught a handful of beginner Greek classes using the basics of biblical Greek and kind of using the grammar translation method, and I've been wanting to push into teaching Greek as a living language. I didn't have a structure. I didn't have a plan for how to do that, and this book has given me a structure and a plan, a way to move into that without having to figure all of that out myself. So I'm actually planning on using this book for my the next Greek class that I'm teaching at my work, and I think it's going to be great. That's going to start probably it's going to start next week, really, and I'm really excited to get in there and see how this book works with actual students, because I've been going through it entirely on my own, and while that's been helpful, I haven't had dialogue partners in it. So, those are the reasons right now that this book is in my bag, and why I think it's so cool, and why I really wanted to share it with you guys. I hope you guys will check it out and let me know what you think about it. But that's all for today. That's what's in my bag. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you next time.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.